Brian Copes, Lessons Learned Interview, 225-2016. Lessons Learned Record of Interview Project Title, LL05 Interview Code, LL05C15 Date/Time, February 25, 2016 Location, Washington, D.C., Over the phone, Purpose, to discuss Gen. Brian Copes, RET, experience in Afghanistan as Joint Chief of Staff of the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard. Interviewees, Gen. RET, Brian Copes. Cigar attendees, Margaret Jacobson, Research Analyst. Non-attribution basis, yes no X on the record, check back for direct quotes recorded, yes no X recording file record. Number, N/A prepared by, name, title and date, Margaret Jacobson, Research Analyst. February 3, 2016 reviewed by, name, title and date, Paul Fishstein, Team Lead, March 6, 2016 Key Topics, Civil Affairs. Whole of Government Approach. USAID ADTVS. Dose mentality. My criteria for projects: more money doesn't mean better coin. Abandoning development. Bottom-up development is better than top-down model for interagency development. Effects of 2014 drawdown. Divergence in viewpoints between civilian affairs and conventional military. Key takeaways. Lessons learned. Record of interview. Whole of government approach works best when each senior agency official treats each other as equals. USAID is not designed to create a self-sustaining Afghanistan. Money starts with Congress. We should not have been given so much money. ADT thought small and impactful vs. DOS thought large with greater dollar amounts. Projects should be small, impactful and affordable to the Afghan. Bottom-up development from the grassroots is better than the top-down approach we implemented. PRTS and ADTs should fall under DOS. Effects of the military drawdown on ongoing activities. My first comment is don't confuse activity with achievement or accomplishment. A predictable road to failure is to look at high numbers which only measure input, not impact. I was on PRT Coast on FOB Chapman. Civil Affairs soldiers and CAT, Civil Affairs teams, were farmed out to various combat outposts. Thika soldier is one of the most mature and capable soldiers that had a great sophisticated view of the world. The ESS, SGT, and E6S, SSG, were far beyond any MAJ and LTC on the kinetic side of the Army. The kinetic side had no soft skills. That was the strength of the reserve component. They weren't active duty soldiers and only knew how to do Army things. Security was the 800-pound gorilla, but it was about the hearts and minds and altering the Afghan culture. The crack cocaine of development was how much money was spent. It was an addiction that affected every agency. Whole of government approach. I was blessed to have an 0 to 6 ENT approach. He shaped how ETA RE-INTE and CREA Board of Directors. With the whole NT approach there was one rep from state and USDA, and the Army Corps of Engineers always told his civilian counterpart that you are my equal, I'm the senior official and you are the senior rep of your department, so we will make decisions together. USAID in my opinion is a government agency that has lost its way. The agency's mission is to perpetually involve itself in projects to justify its existence, meaning locals are dependent on USAID so USAID can continue to exist. USAID doesn't work itself out of jobs so the locals can be independent. USAID built national-level contracts and contractors would go out and all-edgedly do what USAID wants and send pies of the projects. We, the ADTs, went and found only 4 of the 14 projects. There was no QA/QC, quality assurance/quality control, on USAID's part. No one could go into the field. It was in part because the environment was not permissive and prohibited normal procedures for conducting QA/QC. As a result, contractors cut corners to maximize profit. The contractors had to pay off HIG, Hezbollah Islami Gabudin, or the mob to not disrupt the project. That is why there was shoddy work and construction, because money went to HIG versus quality materials. Of the 3 PRT commanders I found one to be AB and the other 2 to be CS. The Navy and Air Force did not send their best and brightest, the ones that would go on to future senior level positions. The PRT was Frankenstein with a whole bunch of parts from Dodd put together to make a whole. This presented a leadership challenge. The commanders were not equipped to lead in a lessons learned record of interview complex environment and were not postured for success. This was out of their league. PRTs were an afterthought. Money starts with Congress. How much money was spent starts with Congress. Congress gives us money to spend and expects us to spend all of it. No one in the military is going to go back and say we really don't need all this money, we only need X amount of money. The attitude became we don't care what you do with the money as long as you spend it. That was wrong. I've never heard of TFBSO. Maybe under another name, but not TFBSO. ADTVS. Dose mentality. When I went to Afghanistan, I expected to be frustrated by the Afghans, but I was not prepared to be frustrated by our US agencies. We equipped the AG extensions so the Afghan government could train the farmers so they can have face-to-face and see what their government is doing for them. We didn't train the Afghans, we had the government train the Afghans. We coordinated with the Department of State. Except the Department of State didn't like what we were doing. It said we were thinking too small and we needed to develop a juice factory. This idea came from a career developer from the Department of State or USAID who did development in Ukraine and thought it was a good idea for Afghanistan. My criteria for projects: I have 3 guiding principles for doing a project. Ideas identified that could help develop solutions had to meet 3 criteria, which worked in Coast Province and I have no doubt will work in other areas like Purwan. 1. Had to be reproducible using locally available supplies and materials. 2. Had to be affordable for the average farmer who is making $1 a day. X. Making a greenhouse out of rebar that is in the $100 to $300 range. 3. It has to be sustainable in knowledge and materials including spare parts that will last for generations. So the solution doesn't make the criteria focused on short-term results. More money doesn't mean better. There was a $30,000 greenhouse and the bottom was composed of various materials not sustainable by the local Afghan. We had a team member make a greenhouse for $55 that did exactly what the $30,000 greenhouse did. It started the growing season sooner. Now I can convince an Afghan to spend $55 on a greenhouse because it works and it's cheap. B. 6. Showed me a map of coast and where all the roads were constructed. He leans over and tells me how this is all decided. It's all corrupt. All the sub-governors asked for a road and their contractors benefited from it. I said, how is that any different from the US? Corporate companies benefit from the government. It doesn't matter what the culture is. Business is business. People are people. The Afghans are motivated by the same things Americans are. Coin. The agriculture mission was not a humanitarian one. It was coin, separating the population from the insurgents. If it was humanitarian, we wouldn't care where we went, we would just help people. There was a reason why we went to some villages and not others. Some districts had 15% of the province's population vs. 2% in another district. We went to the districts with the greater population to get more bang for your buck. The road trade corridor did allow for farmers to get goods to market. It did have an economic benefit. We would spend time on both sides of the road to positively influence the populace. Lessons learned record of interview. Abandoning development. By 2011 we started shaving the security platoon for the AG teams and we were told to use the PRT security, which would drastically reduce our missions because the PRT commander had other priorities. By 2012, a year later, security was taken away from the PRT. Governance, rule of law fell by the wayside and we had to compete for scraps. Security became number one. Senior military had abandoned the governance, economic and rule of law effort. The planned drawdown of 2014 precipitated this. Security retained its prominence. There was a slight rebalancing away from security, but the focus was now on Bagram and Kabul at the ministry level. It's just senior officials working at the national level. The most effort is in the north and west, and the south in Kandahar less so in the east. Bottom-up development is better than top-down. The top-down strategy was a flawed strategy from the beginning. I don't want to criticize the people who made these decisions, because I think they did the best they could under the circumstances. But we have to realize that our country didn't start from the top down. We grudgingly created a federal government. The US created its own federal government in 1776. So why did we think we could have created a central government given the decentralized nature of Afghanistan? We should have modeled the approach after the 13 colonies. However, we don't have the political will. That would take a 10 to 20-year effort. We need to focus on low-dollar high-impact. It's not about the money, it's about small projects on the local level. Thousands of small projects on the ground would have been better than these large-dollar projects. CERP was the monetary vehicle that was available for people to use. The funding stream for development has to emanate from DOS, not DOD. He who holds the purse strings holds the power. However, the DOS resource is not equipped to operate on the level the military can, on the ground. Career Foreign Service officers are not experienced and equipped to operate in Afghanistan. Early in the conflict, DOD should be in charge, but should then dip down and transition to DOS. It was an uncomfortable balance who was in charge. It was never clear that DOS was in charge. The Integrated CivMil Campaign Plan written in 2009 that was co-signed by Eikenberry and McChrystal was a good document to articulate the roles of each agency. It just was not executed well. We are winding down now, so there is no political will to follow through. Model for interagency development. A good model is the CivMil Memo of Agreement. I had the AG person, PRT commander, maneuver element, DOS, and USAID sign. It outlined guiding principles and goals to achieve. This was based on assets. It was a simple unifying agreement that was people-centric, not project-centric. We complemented each other, not conflicted with each other. It's a wrestling match on who should control the PRTS and ADTs. They are going to fall under the military, but should have been under DOS. I think we are smart enough to construct a way to have the PRT and ADT assets fall under DOS and make it work. I'm going to be critical of the active duty military, because they breed a certain culture. They keep choosing people that act and look like them. You can take a 3 or 4-star general who can provide operational and logistical guidance, but they shouldn't tell the PRTS and ADTs what to do. They should answer to DOS. The PRTS and ADTs should have been guided by state. That's why the lines of effort were conflicted. However, you would be hard-pressed to find a military commander willing to relinquish control. We ran out of time before we could get into PSD-specific info. He plans to send me docs regarding PSD-specific projects they did. He did comment that value chain is a high-level esoteric concept that doesn't translate well to Afghans, and stated they did limited PSD and treated it like a second-order effect.